Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am excited to share my conversation today with Christine Klahn. She is the founder and CEO of ChemE Queen Bee, which is a product development and small batch manufacturing company right here in San Diego. She's created a host of products for clients in industries including beauty and wellness, CBD and cannabis, food and beverage, and sports and nutrition. Welcome to the show today, Christine.
Felina, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here as part of your show.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to share your story. So let's dive in. I know you are a Texas girl, true and true. And in fact, started off your career path there at Texas A&M. Talk about your decision to get a degree in chemical engineering.
Well, first off, Giga Maggies. I have to say that. But yeah, I am. I'm originally from Dallas, grew up there, and so yeah, my Texas comes out at times. You'll hear it and you'll see it in my phrases that Californians laugh at. But yeah, I was really good at math and science growing up. I have a grandmother who was a physicist who took classes, with all the boys in college, and my dad, computer programmer, my mom, a mathematician. I have an uncle who's a nuclear physicist with patents, so it was kind of natural that I would go towards math and science. And I ended up going to a jets engineering competition in high school with other people who were big nerds like me, and it was really the first time I saw lasers, and I thought, hey, this might be the right road for me. And then in high school, I ended up taking two different chemistries, and it was really the Chem 2 that was kind of a college level that really made me love chemistry and think, hey, this is cool. I could make stuff, like I could create things. How fun is that? And so that kind of got me into it. I was always doing crazy things as a kid, like, things engineers do when their parents look at them kind of funny. So it was a natural progression at that point.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, and I know that you, next step in the process, after you graduated, you headed up to New York. What was your first job out of college?
So my first job officially was Eastman Kodak Company at their world headquarters in Rochester. And my grandmother, my dad was from New York originally, so it was great to get to leave Texas and get to see another part of the country and, work for a company that had been around 100 years. So that was a really cool experience, actually, as an engineer, starting off at a company like that, mega corporation. And then that's kind of what I did in my career. I started off at the big companies, and then I worked my way towards the smaller, more niche companies, which is really better for your resume at the end of the day. Helps you get the jobs, and then you can get more specific as you get more experience.
Awesome. Okay. So I want to go back a little bit here along your career path. Yes, Kodak is certainly one of the biggest household brands probably on the planet. But interesting, that company's been through a lot, over the last 50 years or so, a lot of changes in the industry. As a process engineer, what specifically did you work on?
Yeah, so I got to work, a lot of times it was the different chemicals that went into film. I, at one point, worked in the dye area, the milling area, as a support engineer. And so on any given day, if I went out into the plant, I would either be magenta, cyan, or yellow, covered in little bits because they were very fine dyes. So I did a lot of that early on, process improvement. And then I went on to Invitrogen, more of a biotech environment, very clean room. And there were things from each of those jobs I really kind of took with me that I enjoyed, kind of that helped me build my own company later on.
Yeah, absolutely. One more pause on Kodak. I read that there's been a bit of resurgence of the nostalgia of film. So interesting.
Yeah, there has. And I can honestly say that nobody beats Kodak's black and white, film. They're still the hardcore people that are still using it. And and love it. And we're now seeing these like younger generation who are getting back into these nostalgic things, and that's exciting too. So, and I know Kodak is certainly trying to pivot now and work their way into being a new kind of a new Kodak. So hopefully it'll be interesting to wait and see. I still have a lot of friends that work there.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. So you moved over to Thermo Fisher, and then you moved to Northern North Carolina. Is that right?
Yes, I did. So at this point, I actually was a single mom, and I had to make a choice really for me personally, if I could keep up with an industry job, the fast pace, the hours, which had been pretty insane in the previous jobs I'd been at times, holidays especially. A lot of times we were there working while everyone else was at home eating their turkey. I spent one Christmas putting a 10,000 liter reactor through the roof and through the roof of a facility while it was snowing. And I was like, maybe as a mom, this really isn't the career path for me. So I took a break, and I actually went into academia. With the master's degree that I had received from University of Rochester, which Kodak had actually paid for, I was able to then teach at like community college, 2-year college level. So I spent a few years in academia where I could set my schedule, and I could kind of be there more, as a mom for my son. And so, I think it's really important to know that I was still doing chemical engineering. I was still doing, teaching biotech. I was still teaching organic chemistry. I was still in it, but I had shifted my career path because of where I was in my life. And I think it's an important lesson that you don't have to stay on the exact same path. And then now here I am, how many years later, right? I've come back to industry and manufacturing, and the fast pace and the adrenaline junkie that I am loves it, right? So those are things that I think we have to appreciate. Is our path may be a little crooked and crazy, but we do what we need to do when we need to do it, and that's part of kind of growing into your own.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know you've had some international adventures. How did that play into your career path?
Well, I've had kind of two. The first one was I was able to get an internship while I was at Texas A&M. I got a summer internship at Bayer in Leverkusen, Germany. And so I got to go over for a summer and work in a lab there. And it was I have German heritage, but my German is not great. And I had to learn some additional German. And by the end of the summer, though, the Germans did speak German to me. So that was really exciting. That's when I knew I was finally conversational. But I had to go into another lab and mix chemicals together in a different language that I didn't really know well. And that was a little scary, but it was also an adventure. Being able to travel every weekend, Paris and Munich and all these different crazy places. And it was a wild ride. So I highly recommend getting to spend a summer working at a chemical company in another country if you get the opportunity. And then the other adventures I've had been more on a personal level, which is when I was in the Carolinas, I had my own little organic farm, and because I understand chemical engineering, I can provide the missing soil nutrients organically. And that's kind of what I do in my business is, I understand the soil needs these chemicals, but how I provide those chemicals to the soil makes a difference in how that food comes out. So I had my own little farm, and that was my little experimentation. That's when I started making lip balms and such. But I became kind of a local expert, which isn't hard to do in some of these areas where you live. There's like a very small town, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're the expert." So, and I ended up getting to go to Africa twice. The first time in 2006, I went to Ghana in West Africa, and then in 2008, I went to Guinea. And both times I got to go with an organization that let me, it was the whole teach a man to fish concept. And so I went over to teach sustainable farming and understanding of nutrients, understanding of how to grow better soil, create better soil and grow better food organically and safely for people in West Africa. And it was a really amazing experience, getting to teach and getting to experiment and teaching them like how to make tomato cages out of vines and get their eggplants off the ground so that they didn't have, end rot. And they just loved it. They loved learning. It was such an amazing experience.
Wow, that is incredible. My goodness. Why can't we do more of that in the world?
I know. I actually was I still have friends there. And I was actually yesterday talking to a friend of mine there. And I said, now that my son is older, like, we need to come out. We need to make a trip this year or next. And let me teach how to make salves and how to make, different medicines. When I was in Guinea, I think it was one of the 10 poorest nations in the world. And I thought I had seen poor in Ghana in the rural parts, but this was like a whole nother level. And there were people that were dying of cancer that didn't even have anything. Like they had no medicine, they had no botanical, they had nothing. And I was just like, if we could get over there and teach, like if I could make salves and be able to put some of these natural ingredients that they're growing into these salves to help with pain and help with appetite and just help someone who's going through a really tough time, that would be amazing. And to have it be internal to the country so that it isn't a third party coming in and taking things. It's like you're doing this, your own people know how to make these products. You aren't importing them. They're made in house. And so those are some things I really want to do in the future, is to take some of my knowledge and be able to help people, really help people who are, in some of the worst places in the world.
Amazing. Amazing. Wow. Such important work that you're doing both here, in the US and then have done over the years abroad. Let's come back to the US here and talk a bit. You had several positions as a chief science officer. You worked for Vape Wild for a couple years.
Yeah.
Talk about a Click oral spray. Talk about some of these roles that you had previous to launching your business 4 years ago.
Yeah, so actually Vape Wild is what got me back to Dallas. I decided it was time to leave the Carolinas and head home to be with my family. And of course, that didn't last. They're still a little mad at me about coming to California. But I ended up becoming the chief scientist really at Vape Wild, and it was a smallish company. It was a startup like in 2014, but it was my first time getting to be in a startup company. I mean, they were at that point not a startup anymore. They were 5 years in, but it was really a neat experience to be in a company that could just pivot so quickly, going from Kodak, which, everybody says is the dinosaur, right? And then you have something like the vape industry. And what was interesting too is, because it was the Wild Wild West, regulatory wise, I got to ensure that our products were safe. So when I hear people talk about how unsafe vape is, I'm like, wait. I was in there running a GC mass spec. I could literally tell you every single chemical that came up in the vape, and I could research every single one and know what the effects were on the body. And so I felt like that was also a way of being the gatekeeper between us putting out products that were unsafe and making sure that we were testing, making sure we were doing a lot of internal testing that a lot of people weren't aware of. So of course, as the vape industry has peaked and now pretty much is dying, they've sold out to another company, but it was really a kind of a fun ride with them, and that's really what got me into thinking, hey, it would be really fun to start my own company. And so that's really what got me out to California was I met a couple of potential business partners. And we actually had started the Happy Chemist, which is probably what you had seen on there as well. And that was our first kind of entrepreneur. Well, actually, we had NTRL, which was a natural company, and then where we were doing flavors. And then we ended up doing the Happy Chemist. So there were a couple starts and stops along the way when I got out to California. I learned pretty quickly that it's really important to find business partners who match your values and who match even your style. My customers and clients, I'm all about high quality, garbage in, garbage out. That's the engineer in me. So I think it's really important to create high quality products. Does that mean my things cost more? Yes, it does. But I think for the people that want the clean, pure, natural, they want those high quality ingredients, they're willing to pay a little more for them. And I had business partners who wanted to be low cost, low quality, high volume. And I just got to the point where I said, I think it's time to part ways. And I want to keep my company where it needs to be in my little happy niche place. I have celebrity clients, like they have a certain expectation, and I want to be there. If people want the cheapest game in town, then they can certainly find that, but that's not me. And so those were things, as I've learned along the way, of keeping your standards high and saying this is where I'm going to be, and parting ways with people who maybe aren't in the same vision as you is important. Those are important lessons to learn as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about this product, Click Spray. I'm on the website right now. It looks really, really interesting. Nano infused mouth sprays. What is this?
Yeah, so Click actually has been my biggest client of ChemE Queen Bee. We've worked together since 2020. They launched on 4/20/20, and at the time, they said, we want to be the Banaka of weed, right? And if you remember the 80s, the Banaka, and I
Yeah.
said, I can do this. I loved Banaka. I mean, this stuff was like, you took a hit of that stuff and you're like, woo, fresh,
Yeah.
minty. I loved it. And
I
so
totally forgot about that
yeah,
product, Christine, until you
I
just
know.
said that.
It was the best, right? And so when I felt like it was synergistic, that I'm like this 80s, kid who I was like, yes, I was meant for this.
Yeah.
And so I was able to help, they already had their idea of what they wanted to do. And I just able to come in and really, do things like getting the formulation where it needed to be, and mixing, mixing's so important in a lot of processes, and things appear mixed and they're not. And so you have all sorts of problems down the road if you
Mhm.
don't really make a good quality product that's shelf stable. And so those were a lot of the things I came in to help them do, and really get them started. And now they've expanded into multiple states. And the biggest one recently was the Tyson click, where we did the orange punch flavor.
Mm.
And so that was really exciting to see Mike Tyson holding this, and I'm like, oh, that's me, I helped make that. So it's really exciting to see some of these crossovers and some of these fun things happening in LA and across the country right now.
Absolutely. And sorry to geek out here for a second, but so the delivery mechanism for this spray, talk about delivery mechanisms a little bit in some of these
Absolutely.
products.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the STEM part of my nerdy company. So one of the challenges with big molecules, I'll say big fat soluble molecules, and included in that is things like collagen, CBD, THC. Okay, they're huge. They're fat soluble. They don't want to go into your body, into your water, your blood that's made of water. So in order to get these things bioavailable, meaning, I can have all the oil I want, but if I can't get it into my body, into my brain, to my bloodstream, and then to my brain, it doesn't do me any good. So the idea behind the nanotechnology, and we see nano encapsulation across pharmaceuticals. It's not a brand new technology. It's just there's different ways to do it. But the idea is that you have, first of all, you beat the particle down into very tiny, tiny particles, hence the nano part. The idea that you're somewhere between 50 and 200 nanometers is a very small particle. So that, first of all, takes that oil particle, makes it much smaller and easier to go into your bloodstream. An example of that would be latex paint. Latex paint is oil paint that is beaten down into tiny particles and distributed in water. And that's why it comes off your hands in water, but that's why it stays on the wall. So it's the same idea. And then the second part of that is the oil base. You sell these very tiny particles, but they're still oil. And you have to create kind of a micelle. That's how your body breaks it down. Your body actually kind of has its own surfactant, which is going to be something that goes between the oil and the water, and it creates a micelle to allow it to actually cross into the bloodstream. And an example of this would be when you take a shower. If you go in the shower and you're oily and gross and you don't use soap, you will still come out oily and gross. If you've had a teenage boy, you understand this concept. So the thing with that you're basically doing, what soap does is it gets the water and the oil to stick together. And so that's the emulsion part of the nano emulsion. Nano, you beat it down into nanoparticles. Emulsion, you get it to go into water. So a lot of these cannabis companies who are, selling raw materials have water soluble. And what that means is it's in water, it's tiny particles, and now you can put it into beverages or water-based products, like, oral sprays, things like that. Before, we couldn't do that. It dissolves great in oil. If you want to put it into a massage oil, no problem. But if you want to put it into a beverage, it's a problem. And so this is how they've gotten around that.
Got it. So interesting. So let's talk about some of your other clients and projects. I mean, you really are the queen bee chemist. So beauty, health, wellness, food, beverage, sports, nutrition. I mean, everything from R&D to quality management. You really help smaller companies, and I'm sure obviously bigger ones as well, but I think where your sweet spot is, if somebody doesn't, have $1 million to hire a chemist, they may have a more approachable opportunity to work with you and your company. So talk a bit about some of those other projects that you've been working on.
Yes, I'm actually really excited about our one-stop shop for beauty and sports that we're kind of launching right now. My favorite clients, honestly, aren't like you said, the huge clients. They're the startups and the ones that don't have a lot of money. That I have a couple people that are, they have a hair salon or a nail salon, or they're a chiropractor or a physical therapist, and so we all know that after COVID, we kind of learned that it's really good to have multiple streams of revenue. And so for me to be able to help someone who already has their own hair salon and a great business to say, hey, why aren't you putting out a shampoo and a conditioner with your face on it? I can do that for you. And we can do, 250 bottles. We don't have to do, you don't need $50,000 to walk into a big manufacturer. I love being able to help other people, especially women, people of color, and veterans, these groups, to be able to help them start their own lines, their own brands, especially when it's a second revenue stream for them. And they can come back and purchase a little more, but I'm willing to grow with them. And then certainly if they get too big for me, I will be more than happy to refer them to, my friend Michelle down the road in Carlsbad, right? So I feel like that's kind of how I want to be, is in that niche. Let me get you started market. Let's formulate. Let's get it in a bottle. Let's get it out there. Have your group of people tell us what they love about it. Let's get it perfect and get you branded and get your products on the shelf where you're selling your own products to people.
Absolutely. Such an amazing opportunity for companies to be able to extend their brand. So, I know you have a facility here in San Diego. What are some of the things that you're able to do in-house versus things that you maybe, have partnerships with other facilities on?
Yeah, so I'm really proud. Our biggest accomplishment this year is our beautiful lab, and it's about 1,500 square feet, so it's small-ish, but it's definitely enough for where we are now. And it's decorated in Tiffany's colors. I mean, it's all girly, and you walk in and you're like, oh yeah, it's Christine all the way through. But I love that. I love that. I've been in so many manufacturing facilities that were just that I get to kind of do my own thing, which is fun. So, but we can do R&D, we can do custom development. Like the oral spray was a new one I'd never done before. I also have a client I'm working with. She wants to do a foaming foot stuff. I've never done a foaming for a non like cleanser project. So those are some new things where I'm having to create new types, new delivery systems. And but we can do all that in our R&D lab. And then we do have some equipment to do some small scale batches, like I said, 250 bottles, 500 bottles, and people can come in and they can certainly look at our private label. I've created 5 private label beauty products that we just put up on our website, so people could buy the kit if they wanted to try it, or that we'd certainly be happy to give them a free kit if they want to come to our facility. But it's basically your day-to-day kit of what you would need, all natural, cleanser, toner, a kind of a balancing, a protective serum. And then we also have kind of a relaxing spray that you would put on your face in the afternoon. And then finally a night cream with silk amino acids and vitamin C, hyaluronic, all these good things that you hear about. So that's a kit we have that's ready to go. So if someone said, hey, I want an age serum with my name on it, we could certainly brand that for you, or we could make some changes to it a little bit. If you said, oh, I want this, but I want ashwagandha, or I've really heard great things about, um, eugenol and what it's doing, what it can do for aging. And so we can certainly tweak it and add what you want. And then we're about to launch our sports and nutrition set, which is also 5 products. And this is really meant for recovery. What I do is when I go through development is I read all the papers I can of the scientists that have recently published on things like essential oils and terpenes and hemp oil and sesame seed oil and all different types of natural ingredients. And I find whatever I'm trying to accomplish, I try to create a blend of those things. And so, for example, if someone is looking for something to give them energy and focus, then I try to put all of those things together in a blend. But if I'm working with maybe women who are menopausal and we want to have a menopause product, then I take all of those natural ingredients that have benefited in menopausal studies and I put them in a blend. And so I'm able to tweak these different ingredients for people who have certain conditions. We certainly can't make any claims medically, but I do my best to really stick with the research and try to develop things that are based on scientific research. I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, you are doing so many cool things. What are some of the things that you're most looking forward to in the upcoming year?
Well, we actually have a brand where we're a partnered brand I'm working on that we're hoping to launch next year. And it'll actually be an arousal spray, an all natural arousal spray for both men and women. And we're kind of hoping to launch it through the LGBTQ community as something that would be a really fun, safe, spray, that someone people could use as couples to create intimacy. So I'm really looking forward to getting this project going. I've been playing around in the lab, playing mad scientist a little, but we're not quite there. So that's a project we have coming up. And then I think, we're hoping to make it to some shows this year, which would be nice. Maybe the Natural Products Expo in Anaheim in March. We're kind of cutting it close, so we might have to wait till fall. But we really want to get some of these products out and really gain more clients who really want what we got, who say, hey, I really want to develop something safe and natural and pure for them. And so we're looking forward to that. So it's going to be a pretty exciting year. I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a great year. I'm super excited to see all the amazing things that you're doing, Christine. If folks want to reach out, get in touch with you, learn more about you, is your website the best place for them to do that, or where can folks find you?
Absolutely. I'll admit I'm not the best about LinkedIn. I do have somebody helping me do posts, but I don't get on it as much as I should. So I would say the website. What's nice is you can read up about our company. There's also a link at the bottom. So if you want to set up a time on my calendar, 30-minute consultation to talk about your brand, or if you want to come out and set an hour to come take a tour, you can do that as well. Schedule that from the website. And I would love to do that. I'm really looking forward to that. We're hoping, we had an open lab event last month, and we're definitely going to have another one tentatively February 25th. Around that time, we're going to open the lab up, and anybody that wants to come out and have some logo cupcakes and tour the lab and try some. I give away lots of free samples, so it's a great time to come by.
I love that. That's awesome. So ChemEqueenbee.com, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, Christine, thanks so much for your time. It's been really fun getting to know you better.
Thank you, Felina. It's been, honestly, being part of Hera Hub and having you in my life has been so amazing. That just being a woman and having women supporting women is such a blessing. You're a blessing. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for being part of it.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.